Kitsap's Sun editorial board with the Central Kitsap School Board position 4. What we do is allow you each 3 minutes to kind of say who you are, say why you're running, anything else that you'd like to let us know, and then we'll launch into some questions and answers. And we'll let Christy go first, since she's the incumbent.
Well, thank you. My name is Christy Cathcart, and I'm the incumbent Director District 4 for the Central Kitsap School District. I've been in this position for 3 terms and have chosen to run for a 4th term. It's a marvelous opportunity to serve the community. We have a great school district, but even great school districts can become better, and I'd like to have an opportunity to do that. Not really sure what you'd like me to add at that time, so I think I'll save those for closing comments.
That's fine.
Okay. My name's Jeannie Schultze. I worked closely with the school district for over 30 years, first as a parent volunteer and then on staff as a volunteer coordinator, and then transitioned to be the community relations specialist. It was a unique position because I had an opportunity to really work both sides of the street, so to speak. I worked closely with the community as well as the district. I retired 7 years ago, and this past year I started looking at the challenges the district's facing ahead, and I realized that I had a lot of unique skills that I could use to help build some collaborative decisions around some very difficult budget cuts and other changes that are coming up. I decided to run for the position. It's only open every 4 years, so this was a window of opportunity to do that. I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
That was quick. I'm going to give you another easy one then. You said you have unique skills that you think you'll bring to the board. Why don't you tell us more about what those are, and then Christy, the comparable question to you is what do you think, what role do you play on the board right now?
Sure. Over the years, I've had an opportunity to really gain skills in terms of communication, particularly in listening carefully and helping groups of people build consensus around difficult decisions. My training is in facilitation and building strategic plans, as well as accreditation and public relations. It means I have strong listening skills, I have strong leadership skills, particularly in a team or collaborative setting, which a school board has to be. There are 5 members all working hard to make a decision. And I also believe at the end of the day that regardless of where we are in terms of the challenges ahead, our students need to be first. They need to be at the core of every decision we make. We need to ensure that we continue to have good, solid student achievement. And working with the district strategic plans over the years, working with the community over the years, I think that adds a lot of strength to my ability to work closely with community, but also balance that against helping the district make some challenging decisions and kind of push them a little bit at the same time to look at it with new perspective and new eyes. So.
The skills and the strengths that I'll bring to this position are some current experience with having to deal with the very questions my opponent has brought up with our decisions around budgets, student achievement, meeting the demands of a 21st century workforce, and having students be prepared, just as our new strategic plan includes in our mission statement. I also bring some really good skills. I'm the Director of Volunteer Services for Hospice of Kitsap County. I have very good communication skills, listening skills. It's critical in the work that I do there. We are working on a strategic plan currently. We had one in place earlier from a previous superintendent. Our current superintendent led us through a process in 2004, 2005. And we're now remodeling that, reworking it for a new strategic plan. And we've been working a lot on that. And in talking about collaborative pieces, that's so very, very critical. We have to collaborate. We have our students who are our primary focus. We also have a significant responsibility, a paramount responsibility to the owners of this school district, who are the people who live within our district, and they pay taxes directly or indirectly through their mortgage, or they write the check out, or they do it through their rent that they pay. And we really need to be inclusive of them, and that's part of the collaborative process. And hoping that the strategic initiatives that we're going to bring about will bring more and more of that, those stakeholders into the fore to be discussing the issues that we face and helping us to come to decisions.
How are you doing that? How are you
Well,
either in the plan or currently as you serve?
Well, as a matter of fact, tonight and Thursday night and I believe Friday, there will be some opportunities for community members to weigh in on the strategic plan. I really wish we had included those stakeholders and their input in at the beginning of our strategic plan rather than just letting the board move forward creating it.
How do you wish you would have done that?
I wish that we would have had a process that would have allowed some stakeholder input from the very beginning, which did not come to pass. That was not the decision of the majority of the board. So we've moved on with as a unit, which we are, as we vote and we decide what to do, we work as a unit once we've gotten there. But I really think we might have missed a mark on not allowing and including the community members in that process earlier.
And so what do you expect from these meetings that are coming up?
Well, we're hoping to get a lot of input. Sometimes when we have events, we try to schedule them so people can make them on different nights of the week and whatnot, and to let people know that we're talking now about budgetary pieces because that's so very critical, is how do we want to build our budget for this coming year? We're facing some significant loss of revenue in a number of areas, and we'd like to have their input about helping to set those priorities, which are really part of the strategic plan on what our true focus is as we have to look at reducing the monies that we have to be able to do our function, but still keep the quality high.
How do you, and this one I want Jeannie to answer also, is how do you make sure it's an accurate representation of the stakeholders in your district? Because sometimes when you have one of these meetings, it's a very small handful of people, or maybe some.
You want to start, Kristen?
Well, we've tried to do a very good job of using as many of our current resources to get the community members there. We recognize that not everyone reads a newspaper in a traditional paper fashion. People use online resources. Depending on the age demographics, there's different interests in how we retrieve and process that information. So we try to do a very good job of reaching out through our traditional sources of PTAs and schools, but I think we need to even work harder in the community because 66% of our community has no current contact with our buildings. So we have to find ways to reach those individuals.
I think it's really important to recognize that when you pull $6.5 million out of your budget, that's going to have a significant impact on the student program. Clearly, at the end of the day, given that we've already pulled $15 million out of the budget over the past 5 years, the district's done a good job of, paring down around the edges. But now I believe the district's at the point where it's an absolute necessity for the stakeholders to be at the table. And that means community members with or without children, it means parents, it means staff who can be impacted and affected by it, and they need to understand this is where we're at this point in time. Engaging people in a dialogue around this, as my opponent has shared, can be very challenging. You need to look at multiple sources and multiple times that they hear it over and over again. So while we begin with these meetings, which I think are a good way to start, whether or not people turn up will be dependent on whether they really fully understand the significance of the reductions that are in front of us. Hopefully they will come, they will become informed, they will come and learn about it, and even if they're not there, I'm hoping that all of our resources, communication resources, will help us get the word out. Whether it's online, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's just listening or paying attention to the board minutes, people need to begin to grasp that this is very serious and that we absolutely have to have everybody's input to make that decision. No one's going to be happy at the end of the day. Nobody will be happy when the board makes the final decision next summer. But hopefully, given the strategic plan and the board and the district's commitment to student achievement, the core of the program will be maintained. What will be at play is what's outside the core. What isn't directly funded by state or federal dollars or other grant dollars? And in that case, what else does it also take to run a school? What does it take to maintain a school effectively so kids continue to be in a safe and caring learning environment? We have lessons learned from when we had 3 levy failures in a row. We know things that we can't let go of. But by the same token, this is a tough road for the district to follow. You have to ask tough questions. How much does this program cost? How does it impact student achievement? Does it support our strategic plan or effort to improve student learning for each individual child? I don't expect the communication to be strong or people to show up significantly at first, but my sense is from past experience that once they understand this will have a real impact not only on our kids, it will impact our parents, and it will impact our community as a whole. You need great schools to sustain a great quality community. So my hope and wish is that by very hard, strong work on the part of the board and others, we're able to do that. But it means letting go of things that traditionally we've done for years.
I was going to ask about that, but you
I do have another,
Okay.
there's another stakeholder that I failed to mention, and I didn't hear, I might have missed it, and that's the business people in our community. It's very important to have input from our business partners in the community, because an educated populace allows businesses to grow, and it allows people to be effective in their workplace. And we need to hear back from those business people and for them to help partner with us in these decisions, because it's really going to be critical for them in the future. And we might also learn some things from them. We've got some really savvy business people in the Central Kitsap School District residential area who we really need to listen to more about how to run businesses. We know an awful lot about the educational piece. We're doing, I think, fairly well operationally, because we have had to cut significant dollars over the past few years because of decline in enrollment. But we also, but we're not businesses like business people are businesses, and I think we need to rely more on getting input from those individuals, and that's a significant part of our stakeholder group.
What exactly, explain that one just a little bit to me. What exactly do you expect to hear from them?
Well, there might be very easily some business model concepts that educators would not necessarily think of, because they're in the business of educating. They understand how the mind takes in information, how different people learn. They know all of that educational stuff. And we've got some really good people who do have some operational parts, but there's something about running a business that's very, very different than running a school district. Historically, our district, from the time we returned here in the late 80s, this was an area of growth. And the challenge that the district was facing was, how do we grow and how do we spend the extra revenue that we're bringing in, because we have all these additional students? Because of growth cycles, we've been in a decline, and we have lost significant dollars just because we have fewer students. We've gone from close to 14,000 down to 11,500. That's a significant drop in enrollment. The other thing we've just recently lost is our heavy impact money, which is extremely significant. So there's a lot that we need to face. And a lot of businesses have also faced declining revenues and are able to keep their business going, to think outside the box. Even within our staff, we've recently, you all ran a wonderful article this weekend about the Peninsula Band Classic at Silverdale Stadium. We've taken, and we didn't do it, it was the staff members were involved in doing this, taking the Clahalia Band and the CK Band and making them a joint Spirit of Silverdale Band. It allows a band to have the kind of tone you want on the field. It allows a program to continue to go. And we need to start thinking outside the box, because traditional ways of doing things are, I doubt that they'll work with what we're facing in the next year or two.
You know, Christy makes a good point about engaging business, and I think that there are some strong elements that already exist in the school district. For example, we have a finance committee that has strong representation from local business people, people who have strong project management and budget skills. They've been a driving force and committed many, many hours to help hone this budget before it's recommended to the board. Well, this is an opportunity. We have a model. How can we build on that? Again, when you flip to the capital facilities sides, there's a capital facilities planning committee that pulls in community members. And for this upcoming expenditure of the capital levy funds, there will be a quarterly review by some very skilled, highly expertise people from the business community who will come in and lend their expertise to make sure those dollars are well spent and spent on the projects that were promised in the levy. So building partnerships with the business community, I think, is very strong. I know that over the years, some really good models have been brought in from business. For example, I don't know how many of you are familiar with continuous quality improvement. But even now, as you look at the proposed teacher evaluations that are out there that will be coming our way, you're looking at continuous quality improvement being embedded even in the teacher evaluation process. So clearly there's expertise in our community. The time and effort that those people put in, the hours and hours of expertise, needs to be valued, respected, and listened to carefully by the board, because their time and energy has great wisdom that can help move the district forward.
A moment ago you said there are the core programs that have to be maintained, obviously the state and federal things, and you said that there's also then figuring out what are the priorities behind that. So I'd like each of you to say what your priority, what are the other things that come right after that core set that is very important for your district?
If I knew what was in the box, and that is yet to be defined, but that is the solid underpinning of really getting at continuous improvement in student achievement. You know, what is it that we absolutely fundamentally have to make that happen? There will be programs that are all around the edge that we typically think of as a well-rounded education, something that we all experienced. Well, my sense is a lot of that's going to be outside the box. So the criteria is going to have to be built to really look at it carefully and really focus on continuing to improve individual student achievement. The district strategic plan already has some very good criteria against which you can bounce some of this. But at the end of the day, the dialogue with the community is going to be, how does this stack up around supporting improved student achievement? And if we can't get there with it, and it's further down on the priority list, are there other creative funding opportunities or resources where we can still include it in our children's education, but we may not have the dollars for it within the budget? And it's going to be tough. People are going to have to look at things like, is the pool more important than advanced placement classes? You know, at the end of the day, in my mind, a challenging curriculum is going to be more important than whether or not we can afford to maintain and keep the pool open. But it's going to be getting that rank order. I remember years ago when we were facing this after 3 levies, and I lost my job because I was well below the line in that particular effort. It was a very deep, thoughtful, painful discussion, and I think all of us know at the end of the day, it's what's in the best interest of our students, what's in the best interest of their learning, what's in the best interest of them becoming the people and having the opportunities to go forward that we want our children to have in the future. So.
Well, and that discussion is what starts tonight with the community programs, is the prioritization of those things that are critical. We know that we're going to have anywhere from 5 to 10 million fewer dollars next year. After the legislature has their special session in November, December, it may be even more significant than that. So what we're looking at doing is, I hope what we're looking at doing from the community is recognizing those things that are absolutely critical, those skill sets and the foundational pieces that are needed. Our secondary schools are already looking at electives. Some of the traditional electives are electives that our students have become very, very comfortable having and expect to have. A lot of the schools are not having those any longer because we're having to be so very efficient. And this is that low-hanging fruit that we've already picked off the tree that's gotten us those $14 or plus million right now that we've cut over the last 6 or so years. What we've done is we cannot offer things when we don't have a full classroom contingent of students. A lot of our foreign language classes, in order to keep those classes going, because who wants to take a first year of a class if there's not going to be a second, a third, and a fourth year opportunity? You tend to lose students over the years as they take more and more classes in foreign languages. But what we're seeing is teachers taking maybe a second and a third year of a language and putting those two groups together in the classroom. Some of the students, I was talking to one counselor, there just aren't the offerings that there used to be. Some of the students are sad to miss that. But we have to look at having more than 8 or 10 kids in a class. We'd love to do that. We'd love to be able to provide the opportunity for a handful of students. But that's not what we're allowed to do in the current situation. One of the things that the board has already addressed is the situation of the pool, and that appears to be, we voted to close the pool in the year 2013. That's already been done. If we have to spend more money on it, it might be closed sooner, but that was a decision made several years ago by the board, looking at what those needs are. The prioritization that's going to happen tonight, you did a wonderful article in the paper about the lost revenue that we're going to have in the years to come. I'm really, really seriously hoping that that gets people's attention, because when you start looking at things that people really love and want their children to have access to, that will get the community out. I'm sure my opponent remembers during that double, triple levy failure, the crowd in the Jenny Wright gym who were all out, because it suddenly becomes something much more personal. It's not a theoretical issue, it's extremely practical. And the strategic plan is what's the center of all of this, because we have defined what our vision is and what our mission is, and that's going to help to define what it is we choose to do. I personally look at things as curricular, extracurricular, and co-curricular and extracurricular. And I think we can still have some ways, by thinking outside the box, of having those other pieces that students really enjoy and look forward to. Right now we have some parent groups that are raising a significant amount of money to keep programs going. That may be something that other groups have to look at doing also.
I think, too, it's important to recognize that technology is becoming more and more of a tool in terms of delivering instruction. I go back to when Clahalia was first developing its advanced placement programs. They really didn't have enough students to form classes, say for English or for physics or something else. What they did use was distance learning, and they had a teacher who came in and coached them, so that they were online taking these courses. Even though there might be only 2 or 3 of them interested in taking that class, they had a coaching opportunity from a teacher, they had support online at home, and they were able to successfully complete those classes. So even though we may not have the opportunity to continue really small classes, we may be able to find ways in which technology and other tools that we have available today that can still support those student interests. And again, as my opponent pointed out, it's going to be absolutely essential that we think creatively. Parents might be able to also, in terms of parent engagement, help us find resources so we can continue to grow that. That's a program that you can't reduce. It's core and essential to every kid's success, every student's success. They need, as much as possible, to continue outreach for parent engagement. What that will look like, I don't know, but I would strongly urge the district to continue that part of the process as a fundamental core. I'm also pleased because we have the opportunity to access funding such as the recent grant from the Department of Defense. It's $2.5 million. It lets us do things in terms of staff development that we won't have the dollars to do, particularly around kindergarten and early literacy, and intervening at the secondary level for students who are still struggling with literacy, which is near and dear to my heart because I work with the Adult Center for Education around literacy. I also see embedded in that a really strong staff development piece for leadership. In other words, principals, teachers, administrators can partner with the University of Washington, so when they go to a classroom, they can actually look and see what are really effective teaching practices and how can we implement them. What we learn can be leveraged across the district. So it isn't just focusing on all kindergarten teachers. These are lessons learned that can be built upon for all of our staff, because one of the core elements that I think we are going to have to continue to look at is how do we keep our staff growing and continuing to learn so they have more effective instructional practices that help each child learn right down in the classroom. So we must continue to look for these opportunities. Reality is how well your teachers teach has a real big impact on how well kids learn. So what can we do to support them over time?
One of the things the union, when they signed this most recent contract, kind of got hung up, at least in our reporting, was the classroom sizes, and there was some negotiation on which grades would be held and which grades would grow. With all the budget things you're talking about, that's probably going to come up again.
Absolutely.
Where do you stand on either how how are you going to hold the line, for one thing? And are there other ways to either structure how the schools are set up differently, or what other ideas are there out there to kind of keep a focus on that?
Do you want to start, Christy?
Well, I think one of the things that's critical is even when you build a house, no matter what you do, it's the foundation that's the most critical. And if we build a strong foundation at the bottom, which is where you want it, in those lower grades, that gives the students the ability and the basic skills to progress on. We know that third grade reading is a critical piece. So in those lower grades, if we could keep the classes smaller and add on perhaps a little bit more as we go on, that would be ideal to me.
Which grades do you mean?
I'm
What
thinking
you said
kindergarten,
lower?
first, second, third.
Okay.
That's
That's where you would like to focus on keeping the class sizes?
Yes, not that I want, classrooms to be humongous. I don't think that, and there comes a point where it's just not manageable, and in some sort of subjects, even not safe to have too many students in a class when you're in sciences and labs and whatnot. Perhaps there's a way with our wonderful paraeducators to be able to be another individual in the classroom. This goes to that thinking outside of the box piece. One of the things that I have suggested, and I know no one ever wants to go there, but now it's been brought up that we probably will be going there, is starting with a zero-based budget. Because when you pick the low-hanging fruit, those are the things you can see, but sometimes you don't know how exact dollars are being spent until you start to build your budget from scratch. Painful experience to do, but sometimes very necessary, and Mr. Victor has actually talked about actually going there to start the next budget process from the bottom and build it up to make sure that we haven't missed anything. Ideal class size, we know smaller is better. Is there an optimum size? We may very well be at that now with our funding model.
How do you answer that question? How do you get at what the optimal class size is?
Well, it's really interesting. There seems to be no data, and if we're a data-driven school district, that's what we should base all of our decisions on, is the data. Data from those outside sources that are wonderful ones to rely on to help us figure out some of the new things that are in education, but also our own data of what we're seeing. What are we seeing? And we have a new system in place for the last few years, Pearson Inform, that will hopefully give us those numbers so that we can step back and say, okay, what is optimum for our student population, for the people that we serve?
Is it your opinion that they're appropriate now?
I think
that
they're
22
appropriate.
to 24 numbers?
Yes, I think those numbers seem to be appropriate. However, at one point, no matter how appropriate something is, we may have to step back and say, this is our ideal, but reality says we have to move up a few students or whatever. We're going to have to take those steps, and that may be very painful.
I think, too, you also have to recognize that the board plays a specific role when those contracts are negotiated. And it's a similar model that's used around the state, and that's where you bring together that team of individuals who really represent it. They come up with a contract, hopefully something you can meet. But as she shared, we are going to be in difficult times. So first step is we're going to have to get inside those contract negotiations for the coming year, because as you say, it's going to come up again. And again, we have to recognize that students have to be able to read literally with strong literacy by the end of grade 3 in order to succeed at the higher grade levels. When you have to backfill at the secondary level, it takes a lot more work. It's a big uphill climb. And I know from my own work with the Literacy Council, by the time you backfill at the adult level, it's a struggle. So again, I would concur having a strong foundation to the process, trying to maintain what the best research available tells us, or even the experience of our own system tells us is a good class size, will be something to strongly consider.
And what's your opinion as far as the optimal number?
At this point in time, I have an open mind to really look at it closely. I know that our teachers have an opinion, but I also know our budget may tell us that we have to work to accommodate more students in the classroom. Well, if you do, then what kinds of resources need to be available for our teachers to be able to do that? What kind of additional paraeducators need to be in the classroom? Do we have special education students who are also in the classroom, in which case we need to make sure that they are well supported during the process too. So I think there are a lot of questions that are going to be out on the table. I think the board is going to have to ask some real tough questions around available funding and class size. And I think we're going to have to work in partnership with our union representatives to try to come to common ground at the end of the day, given the scope of dollars that we may or may not have available at the end of the year. As my opponent has pointed out, we believe it will be around 6.5 million or a little more. But quite truthfully, the state may decide to chop off levy equalization funds. It's one of the pieces that's out on the table right now, and that will be millions of dollars more. It will drive us up to 10 or 11, maybe $12 million cut, and that will be even more painful. I'm hoping by being strong advocates with the state legislature, we'll be able to prevent some of that kind of draconian cuts from happening to school districts around the state, particularly those who don't have the kind of resources from their community where more affluent communities do. It will be very difficult. So,
is there anything that you two disagree on?
You know,
I'm trying to find some areas voters can
there may very well be. There might be.
well, you know, it's difficult because we've both been close to the school district over the years, and we both value a lot of the same things. We both know there will be a very difficult and challenging discussion that's going to begin on Wednesday. The question of whether or not to run a supplemental school support levy. As you probably know, Central Kitsap is really about the 18% threshold of what it could ask for. Typically, school districts around the state have been at the 24%, but we have not, and partially that has helped us qualify for heavy impact aid. Well, the legislature has now bumped that up to 28%. The way that particular opportunity works, should school districts want to dip into it, is you can move from 24 to 28 if you want to. It doesn't mean we can move all the way from 18 to 28. Is that something that the district wants to consider? It's just come off 2 levies in a row successfully. The dollars that would be there would be, I think it was around $3.5, $3.8 million that you might be able to access. I think the board's going to have to look at that closely. I don't think you can say no to that right away. I think you have to weigh in on it. You have to say, what's the impact in terms of our student program? How much would it cost our local taxpayers? How does that feed together with the upcoming school support levy that's going to show up in 2 years? What does that look like in terms of program and retention? The dollars wouldn't be available until the following year, so you're not going to bridge the gap the way you would hope to do. I know that there will be some very strong upfront feelings. Yes, we think that's an idea we ought to do, or no, we think we absolutely should not ask our community for anything more. Or what I'm hoping will happen is we have that on the table as a possibility, and then with open, clear, thoughtful questions and continuing examination of it as an opportunity, decide, is that something where ultimately at the end of the day, does the community want to weigh in and say whether or not it's something we want to provide, given the amount of dollars that we've been taken out of the system, and how far below now we will be compared to other districts in the levy lid. I don't know. I think it needs to be on the table. I think it starts with a dialogue tomorrow night.
Chrissy, go ahead.
Well, we are going to be addressing this tomorrow evening, and I think the things that are going to be coming out with the prioritization pieces tonight and Thursday night, my guess is that after tomorrow night's board meeting, and any reporting that might show up in the paper on Thursday morning may very well get a larger turnout Thursday evening or Friday to those community forums. I think we'll be hearing more because that's going to grab people's attention in a lot of ways. It's unfortunate, I always feel, that you have to be in a crisis mode for people to step back and start to focus on some of the things that happen in our school buildings. I wish people would be focused on them all the time, but that's the Pollyanna in me, I guess. What's interesting is in looking at the entire levy piece of a supplemental levy, there's tremendous effort and energy that goes into a levy that requires groups like the ones Jeannie's been associated with, the Kids Matter, to mount that campaign, because a district cannot by law do their own their own campaigning piece. There's that, plus figuring out what it is we need, making sure that our community will be accepting of that if that's how the board decides to go, and what those monies are going to be used for, how we're going to communicate that, and also getting the input from the community about how they'd like us to spend those monies that we would raise if we choose to go that way. This, I think, is going to be an interesting discussion tomorrow night amongst the 5 board members. Input from community members who will undoubtedly be there because the agenda is out. People will see that on that. I hope people in the community know that they have access through the CK School District's website. If you click on the link for school board, at the bottom of that is a link to board docs. We do an electronic board packet, and there's a public access port to that with the agenda and previous minutes and all of the handouts and the things that are used in that. What I think is always an interesting piece when we talk about the funding is we also have to say to the community, these are the things with the resources you've already provided us, and to show the community that we are good stewards of the funds that they provide for us. And I think that'll be part of the discussion too, and it's an important discussion to have with the community about how we take the wonderful resources they've given us and go forward and be successful with them.
Okay, Angela has a question.
Oh,
Do you have a question?
I do.
Sure.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to follow up on Jim's too.
Well,
because,
okay,
yeah, well, because what he asked you, people are going to have to vote. You're both very bright, you're articulate, you're committed, and we're hearing a lot of the same things. And so why should people vote for either one of you? I think
What separates you from your opponent?
Yeah, and also more pointedly, does each of you think that you would serve better than your opponent? And if so, why?
Well, I wouldn't.
If not, what are you sitting here for?
Well, if I didn't think I could do that, I wouldn't have chosen to run for a 4th term. One of the things that Jeannie pointed out was the necessity to ask tough questions. That's one of the things that if anyone ever attends a board meeting, there are times when I may very well be the only individual who raises my hand or interjects or asks a question. I come prepared, and I don't mind asking questions, easy, hard, what have you, and get answers to those. I think it's very critical to the community to know that when the board, their elected voice, makes a decision on an issue, that the diligence has been done behind making that decision. Not just reading a board packet and saying, oh yes, we need that, let's move forward, but actually doing the discernment and the processing that it takes to know that yes, this is a wise decision. All of the I's have been dotted and all the T's have been crossed, and there's no reason not to support this, especially when we're talking about the significant cuts we've had to make, and I've been through that. This has been an interesting time to have been on a school board with the things that we've been facing in education. On the one side, the valid need to look at student achievement, to make assessments of the kind of effectiveness that a school district has with the resources at hand, having to look at declining enrollments, underutilized space, and having to close schools. Very, very difficult decisions, ones that were made with a lot of thought, listening, and decision-making on the part of the board over the years doing those sorts of things. I bring the current knowledge and understanding of what our board's been through. Jeannie's right. We go back a ways. My involvement in the district has been very long, and not only here but in other places as our family has moved around. But on top of that, this is very different than when I started in 1999. And the other piece of it is no matter what you think you understand and know about the requirements that are and the situations that face the school board, until you're in that position, there is a learning curve. Part of me believes that someone who's been there, done that, and has been through that learning curve may be a better choice for the community.
I think that one of the strengths that I bring to the board is a fresh perspective around where we've been and where we're going. It's a unique experience to work both inside the district but also straddle the community as well. I also believe difficult questions need to be asked about decisions, but I think you also have to be thoughtful and timely in making those decisions. I know Christy has a strong record of pushing and pushing and pushing for strong answers or getting the answers she needs. But I also know if you delay decisions, you also prevent things from happening in a timely manner that need to help you get down the road. So I also believe very thoughtfully that you have to listen very hard and very carefully and very respectfully to every single opinion. That you really need to value everything that comes to the door. One of the best lessons I have learned is that you have to stay neutral sometimes, even though someone is going toe-to-toe with you over an issue, and make sure that at the end of that conversation, they clearly understand that you get it. And it isn't that they're angry or that they're frustrated or they're unhappy. They need to know that they've been heard. I believe the processes that we're getting into right now are going to bring us into an arena where we're going to go through a lot of that. And I believe that the more connected school board members are to individuals in the community, the more likely we are to gain a deeper understanding of what does that mean. What do you really care about? What do you value? I also believe that I have a unique experience that not everybody really wants to have. And again, I go back 2 years ago, we failed 3 levies in a row. When we were in this box, we literally already had, here's what has to stay, here's what's above the line, here's what is below the line. I knew the second the first levy failed, I was done. My job was gone. And I think as board members, we have to also recognize this is not going to be just tough for staff and parents and kids. This is going to be tough for every teacher, every support staff member, everyone who works in the district. Because whether or not your job is on the line, at the end of the day, you're going to know someone who is. And you're going to know someone at the end of the day who's going to lose their job. That's inevitable. It's a tough situation to be in. You can come out of it, I certainly did. But it makes me more sensitive to kind of the 360 process here that engages the entire community, all of the people who are going to be impacted and affected by it at the end of the day. I also have really strong background in building community partnerships and volunteer programs, parent engagement, real hands-on to the point where I've literally trained other school districts how to do this. So, you know, as part of being a board member, yeah, we need to build those structures back and we need to build them on a solid foundation because we're going to need everybody's help to get this done. It isn't going to be easy. Nobody's going to be happy at the end of the day. But I think it's going to take a well-rounded individual who can think down the road, make clear, consistent decisions that are going to be difficult and make them in a timely manner so that the people who need to go do good work, whether it's to go pass a support levy or whether it's to go back to the finance committee and say, great job, but now you have to go find $4 million more. Know that whatever they've recommended, whatever they've said has been clearly understood and respected and valued by everyone who serves on that board. Okay.
Thank you guys. Appreciate your coming in, having this meeting, and
we don't have a closing?
we need to finish because we have another group coming in on the. How about we do this? We'll give one more minute, one last minute.
Okay. It's interesting to hear the comments about the double levy failure back in the 90s. It was during that time that, well, first of all, let me start by saying we're all an accumulation of our experiences. And it's one thing to lose a job, it's one thing to listen to, all of those things are very critical. But I learned a lesson during that time which has made me extremely sensitive to listening to community members. During that time, our son was on the boys' swim team, and a decision was made to end that sport, that it wouldn't be around. And we, as parents of the swimmers, got together and organized and figured out how can we, one, not only help with the boys' swimming issue, but also create something else so that we've got, there was also some Title IX issues involved, and we wanted to start a sport for girls. So as we were getting together to do this, and I was one of the spokespeople for the parent group, I had written up a piece to present to the board members. And I gave the board members a copy of this, and I'm a community member at this time. It was in 1994 before I ever ran for the office. The person who was the sitting board president asked me if I understood what rhetoric was, and I said, yes, I do. And he said, all this is, Mrs. Cathcart, is rhetoric. And the president of the board that time took the piece of paper I'd handed him, and he threw it on the floor in front of the board desk. At that moment, I decided I would run for school board, and that no member of our community would ever be treated like that again. And I haven't. Thank you.
Again, I think I have some really good, strong facilitation skills, some good opportunities to help not only continue to build a strategic plan, to make sure that it really strongly reflects the current situation. Because not only have we have something in place, it needs to be a living, breathing strategic plan that moves forward. I also strongly believe that as we go forward, we need to recognize that there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. We will come out of this. We will regain some heavy impact funds. But what you see today in terms of the program will change forever. Our job will to make sure that whatever we change leads us in a positive, strong direction, continuously focused on improving student achievement and continuously living, giving back to the community the kind of educational program that it needs. And I think my experience with collaboration, with facilitation, my extra work around partnerships will really help us bring that forward. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.